Hello. Hi there, it's nice to see you, and today I'm going to be doing my July wrap-up and talk about what I read in July. So the first book that I read this month was Almost American Girl, an illustrated memoir by Robin Ha. This is a graphic novel about a Korean teenager who moves with her mother to America pretty abruptly and her experience kind of with that. So it talks a lot about cultural differences within cultures and between cultures, and I think it was a really interesting book and I really enjoyed it. It's also kind of a coming of age story because she's a teenager when all this happens. I really enjoyed reading it. It made me think about some things I hadn't thought about before. The art style was really cool. I really liked it. It's also autobiographical to the author's own experience, and I think it's a really interesting way, particularly within like those cultural differences and whatnot, exploring the ideas of being like a strong woman. I thought it was really interesting and I would recommend giving it a read. It's a good go. On Goodreads I rated it 4 out of 5 stars. It was a good book that I enjoyed. The second book that I finished this month was The Poppy War by RF Kuang. How do I describe this book? It's pretty easy, but not really. As a whole, The Poppy War is about war, devastation, like oppressive societies, feminism, trauma, and then magic, relationships, things like that. Most specifically, it explores the devastation of war and it really draws off historical events. Specifically, from what I read and from some RF Kuang interviews I watched, which I really highly recommend. It's inspired by the Second Sino-Japanese War, which happened in the early 1900s, if I remember correctly. Rebecca Kuang is like a lover of history, and I did already talk about this in my July TBR, but I will talk about it again because I really enjoyed it. She really uses like these historical battles and this historical lens to explore this fantasy world. And I know that it's high fantasy and I understand that, and it is high fantasy, but at the same time it did feel really historical. It was just like a speculative historical fiction type thing, but it is a high fantasy. Even though I do really like fantasy books, that really kicked it up a notch for me. All of that being said, this is like a grim, dark book. But if you aren't going into this thinking, oh well, this is gonna be a book about war and violence, and it's really gonna explore how horrible all that stuff is and the trauma of that and everything that goes along with that, then it's probably not going to work out for you. I read in people's reviews, I heard this was like a really horrific story, like a lot of horrific things happen. So I went into that knowing that I know I will have to take a break between reading the first one and reading the second one, just because it is a lot and it's like a lot to think about, and I think it's really good. I really enjoyed like having that opportunity, you know, but at the same time it's like, it's heavy. I need a moment. I do have a lot of thoughts about The Poppy War, and I was contemplating making its own like review video, but I think I might do that for the whole series down the line, which will probably be a while, but you know, whatever. When it gets done, it gets done. The last book in the Poppy War trilogy came out, I think last year in 2020. And so RF Kuang was doing all sorts of like promotional interviews on YouTube and like for colleges and all sorts of stuff, and because a lot of that was online, it's available on YouTube. And so I did listen and watch a lot of those interviews while I was in the middle of reading the book, so there were like a few spoilers because they were promotional interviews for the third book. So if you really don't like spoilers, maybe don't do this. But I personally felt like my reading experience was incredibly enhanced by listening to those interviews with her, because hearing the way that she crafts the books, the way she thinks about the characters, all the different areas that of history and whatnot that she was really interested in and put into the books, really made me think a lot more specifically and like notice those things more specifically, which personally I felt really enhanced my reading of the book. I think I still would have really enjoyed it if it had just been like, you know, just reading it without any interviews, but that to me just really, that was the cherry on top for me. I will be listening to more interviews. Anyone that I can find, I will watch. I liked The Poppy War. I rated it 5 stars just because I thought it was really thoughtful. I really liked it. It was something I enjoyed reading. I didn't enjoy all the horrible things that happened, but I enjoyed the experience. I would recommend it to you if you're looking for something that is a little heavier, maybe like has a lot more layers to it. If like you really love history and just a little bit of fantasy is like not that big of a deal to you, I'd recommend this book. If a little bit of fantasy is a big deal to you in history books, then don't read this. But I think it's really great. I wouldn't call myself a history buff, but I am very interested, and so I think that really did it for me. I liked it. I'm excited to read the next 2 books. The third book that I read in July was And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. So this was actually my first Agatha Christie book, and as the title implies, what happens in the book is people go to this island, they get a mysterious letter. I do love the call to adventure. And so they get this letter that's like, come to this island. And they go to the island, and then they start getting picked off one by one. And so it's a murder mystery. And as the title implies, all of them die. So like, who did it? So it's quite interesting. And I believe it is her best-selling work. Like, I believe it is like the best-selling work. It does have quite an interesting history that I did not know about. The book title was not great, but now the book title is okay. I will say throughout the book there's like an interspersed like really casual sentiments of like anti-Semitism and racism, so that's in there. I wouldn't say that's like an integral part of the story. It's just like weird comments characters have, but I wouldn't say any of the characters are like that amazing of people. And also Agatha Christie was just a rich white woman in the early 1900s, so there's nothing I can do about it now. She is dead. Other than that, it's a pretty good little mystery, and I definitely guessed incorrectly. Like, I was pretty sure. I was like, I know who did it. It's clear. And it was not clear. And luckily at the end it's explained in an epilogue, because otherwise I just would have continued on with my false idea of who I thought did it. So for some reason I thought it was going to be really scary. And maybe it is, but I wasn't scared. I think too because I just find a lot of humor in how the people speak, that I was more paying attention to that than it being like scary. Because also I was like, the title clearly implies that they're all gonna die. There are some clues in the very beginning of the book that tell you, I mean, once you get to a certain point, you know how people will die because of things. I'll let you figure that one out. I'm not scared by it, but I did think it was really interesting. The audiobook was 5 hours. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the narrator. It was a good time. Also, I really liked the characters in the book. Like, I didn't like them, but I found them incredibly amusing. Though they're all such specific people. You know, like, I personally really didn't like Blore. Also his name. I know that's his last name, but like, ugh. Gross. You know, Blore? I don't like that. No, thank you. He was incredibly difficult. Almost anything he said, I absolutely hated. So I guess I did notice the misogyny in the book. But I found it funny, because I just, everything he was saying was like so dumb. Shut up. If I remember correctly, like Justice Hargraves had like one line that he would always say for a time in the book. He was like, we would like it if we could go with you. Like, dude, just say me. Like, he just kept saying that line over and over and over again. I thought it was so funny. And they were all just so amusing. They were so like specifically themselves. Not that I liked them, but I thought they were funny. Yeah, I rated that book 4 out of 5 stars. I thought it was a good book. I think I didn't rate it 5 out of 5 because it was just like, it was a fun little adventure. Like, I enjoyed it. It was clever, but at the same time, I was like, I don't know how anyone could guess who killed them. Because there's a lot of information that you don't have until the epilogue. So it's like, I feel like you would only guess like based on like a lucky guess. Like, I don't think you could work it out. I don't know, someone tell me like if you think like you can work out all the different things, because in the epilogue there's like a long explanation of like how they did it and like all these different things that they did to like mislead people and all this stuff and whatnot. Since I was privy to absolutely zero of that information, like I would never have guessed it was you. And I feel like a good mystery is one that's like there's enough hints that you could like guess who it was based on those hints and not just like casually guessing. I don't know. Someone tell me if like I missed all of them, because it's highly possible. I could have been all caught up in their stupid little sayings. Oh, my favorite was when someone, I don't know who, someone goes, "Oh my good blockhead." What a put down! And the last book that I read in July was The Guest List by Lucy Foley. It sounds very similar to And Then There Were None, but I will assure you it's very different. So a group of people go to this Scottish island for this wedding of these two famous people. Very early on we know that a murder happens, but there's like some time jumps, so the murder doesn't actually like happen until the end. So we actually don't know who's murdered until farther down the line. A mystery, but instead of you trying to figure it out, it's just all unfolding before your eyes. Particularly what I liked about this book is there's one person I absolutely disliked. Well, there were two people. One of them was like I really disliked, and then they became really irrelevant really quickly, which I was absolutely fine with, and I was like, I don't want to hear from them ever again, thank God. The second one became more and more disliked by all of the other characters, and there were more and more reasons to dislike them, and I was really here for it because they put me off in the beginning. So it felt really gratifying for everyone else to be like, yeah, and here's some like more reasons that they're a bad person. So I listened to the audiobook for this as well, as I do with all of my books mostly. So I really liked the owner of the island. I believe her name was Ava. She had an Irish accent because in the book she's Irish, and then the narrator of the audiobook that read her chapters was also Irish. And I really loved that. That was really amazing. I really liked that. I liked listening to it. Thought it was great. This is a book where if you are expecting or hoping or wanting something to be a mystery and figure out what's happening along the way, it's probably not going to work out for you, because it really is just a book. I think about it as it's just a book where all this stuff is like unraveling before you. It's all just happening and you're just along for the ride. There's like a few things throughout the book that you're able to be like, oh, like I get it before these other characters do. I know what's happening. But those are few and far between. I still enjoyed it because it was just like going along for this experience, having this little experience, you know, what have you. If you're really expecting for it to be a true murder mystery, it isn't, and so this might not be for you. On Goodreads, I rated this a 3 out of 5 stars because I thought it was an interesting book. I enjoyed reading it. It was a light read, it was easy, but I didn't rate it any higher because it wasn't like the most amazing thing I read. I don't think I would like put this in my favorite books or anything, but to me a 3 star is like a good book. Like I enjoyed it. I had a good time. I'd recommend it to people. Those are the books that I read in July. I have a few lined up for August. We will see what I get through, see what happens there. And tell me about the books that you read in July. If you've read any of these books, if you have any thoughts or feelings about them, please feel free to share below. I'm always interested to hear what other people have to say, what other people thought when they were reading these books, so let me know. And in the meantime, I hope you are well, I hope you have a good day, and I hope, above all, that you read a good book. I'll talk to you later. Okay, goodbye! I feel like I'm like a news anchor. I'm like, alrighty, let's get down to business.